We need more prisons, more jails, more courts, more prosecutors. So tonight I'm requesting altogether an almost $1.5 billion increase in drug-related federal spending on law enforcement. And while illegal drug use is found in every community, nowhere is it worse than our public housing projects. You know, the poor have never had it easy in this world. But in the past, they weren't mugged on the way home from work by crack gangs, and their children didn't have to dodge bullets on the way to school. And that's why I'm targeting $50 million to fight crime in public housing projects, to help restore order and to kick out the dealers for good. The second element of our strategy looks beyond our borders, where the cocaine and crack bought on America's streets is grown and processed. In Colombia alone, cocaine killers have gunned down a leading statesman, murdered almost 200 judges and 7 members of their Supreme Court. The besieged governments of the drug-producing countries are fighting back, fighting to break the international drug rings. But you and I agree with the courageous president of Colombia, Virgilio Barco, who said that if Americans use cocaine, then Americans are paying for murder. American cocaine users need to understand that our nation has zero tolerance for casual drug use. We have a responsibility not to leave our brave friends in Colombia to fight alone. The $65 million emergency assistance announced 2 weeks ago was just our first step in assisting the Andean nations in their fight against the cocaine cartels. Colombia has already arrested suppliers, seized tons of cocaine, and confiscated palatial homes of drug lords. But Colombia faces a long uphill battle, so we must be ready to do more. Our strategy allocates more than $250 million for next year in military and law enforcement assistance for the 3 Andean nations of Colombia, Bolivia, and Peru. This will be the first part of a 5-year, $2 billion program to counter the producers, the traffickers, and the smugglers. I spoke with President Barco just last week, and we hope to meet with the leaders of affected countries in an unprecedented drug summit, all to coordinate an inter-American strategy against the cartels. We will work with our allies and friends, especially our economic summit partners, to do more in the fight against drugs. I'm also asking the Senate to ratify the United Nations Anti-Drug Convention concluded last December. To stop those drugs on the way to America, I propose that we spend more than $1.5 billion on interdiction. Greater interagency cooperation, combined with sophisticated intelligence gathering and Defense Department technology, can help stop drugs at our borders. And our message to the drug cartels is this: the rules have changed. We will help any government that wants our help. When requested, we will, for the first time, make available the appropriate resources of America's armed forces. We will intensify our efforts against drug smugglers on the high seas, in international airspace, and at our borders. We will stop the flow of chemicals from the United States used to process drugs. We will pursue and enforce international agreements to track drug money to the front men and financiers. And then we will handcuff these money launderers and jail them, just like any street dealer. And for the drug kingpins, the death penalty. The third part of our strategy concerns drug treatment. Experts believe that there are 2 million American drug users who may be able to get off drugs with proper treatment. But right now, only 40% of them are actually getting help. This is simply not good enough. Many people who need treatment won't seek it on their own, and some who do seek it are put on a waiting list. Most programs were set up to deal with heroin addicts, but today the major problem is cocaine users. It's time we expand our treatment systems and do a better job of providing services to those who need them. And so tonight, I'm proposing an increase of $321 million in federal spending on drug treatment. With this strategy, we will do more. We will work with the states. We will encourage employers to establish employee assistance programs to cope with drug use. And because addiction is such a cruel inheritance, we will intensify our search for ways to help expectant mothers who use drugs. Fourth, we must stop illegal drug use before it starts. Unfortunately, it begins early, for many kids before they're teens. But it doesn't start the way you might think from a dealer or an addict hanging around a school playground. More often, our kids first get their drugs free from friends or even from older brothers or sisters. Peer pressure spreads drug use. Peer pressure can help stop it. I'm proposing a $250 million increase in federal funds for school and community prevention programs that help young people and adults reject enticements to try drugs. And I'm proposing something else. Every school, college, and university, and every workplace must adopt tough but fair policies about drug use by students and employees. And those that will not adopt such policies will not get federal funds, period. The private sector also has an important role to play. I spoke with a businessman named Jim Burke, who said he was haunted by the thought, a nightmare really, that somewhere in America, at any given moment, there is a teenage girl who should be in school instead of giving birth to a child addicted to cocaine. So Jim did something. He led an anti-drug partnership financed by private funds to work with advertisers and media firms. Their partnership is now determined to work with our strategy by generating educational messages worth $1 million a day, every day for the next 3 years. $1 billion worth of advertising, all to promote the anti-drug message. As president, one of my first missions is to keep the national focus on our offensive against drugs. And so next week I will take the anti-drug message to the classrooms of America in a special television address, one that I hope will reach every school, every young American. But drug education doesn't begin in class or in TV. It must begin at home and in the neighborhood. Parents and families must set the first example of a drug-free life. And when families are broken, caring friends and neighbors must step in. These are the most important elements in our strategy to fight drugs. They are all designed to reinforce one another, to mesh into a powerful whole, to mount an aggressive attack on the problem from every angle. This is the first time in the history of our country that we truly have a comprehensive strategy. As you can tell, such an approach will not come cheaply.